Under the oak tree. Maxi heard knocks on the door. It was Riftan. Maxi, did you get the clothes? Have you changed? Not yet. Hurry. We must leave soon. One moment. She was not used to getting dressed without the assistance of servants. Fastening the girdle was not so hard, but the straps on the back of her dress were impossible to reach. She was groaning in frustration and her shoulders cramping from the strain when Riftan knocked again impatiently. Are you dressed yet? Could you send for someone to help me? The straps on the back. Riftan opened the door. As he appraised her from head to toe, she hastily stammered out an apology. Forgive me for being slow, but the dress. Awkward silence followed. Don't apologize. I'm not angry, he said. I don't know much about women's clothes, so it didn't occur to me that getting dressed alone would be difficult. Suddenly, he grabbed her shoulders and spun her around. Let me help you. One by one, he started to fasten the straps. Something about the rustle of the dress put her on edge. After much fumbling, he was plainly unused to handling women's clothes. He spun her around to face him again. All done. Thank you. I bought it from a merchant who happened to be staying nearby. It may not be to your liking, but this is the best I could do. I'll find you something nicer once we reach my abode. Maxi blinked. The dress was luxurious beyond anything she was accustomed to. Was it not to his liking? Her life was not as extravagant as he imagined. All her dresses had been sewn by the maidservants with the scraps of fabric left over from Rosetta's clothes. Maxi had never worn something so richly embroidered. Seeing him concerned that she would not find the clothes acceptable, she felt disheartened. Perhaps he was more used to luxury than she had assumed. And perhaps it was a good thing that she had not brought her belongings. What a stroke of luck to have avoided the humiliation of putting her shabby wardrobe on display. This dress isn't so bad. Anxious that she had come across as too haughty, she quickly searched his face. But he betrayed no sign of displeasure as he draped a cloak around her shoulders. She turned her attention to his hands, which were now carefully fastening the cloak straps. To see a knight attending to her most trivial needs felt surreal. Come, let us go. Maxi blushed and nodded as Riftan helped her into a pair of ankle-high leather shoes. Hand in hand, they stepped out and walked down a wooden staircase. One of the knights crossed his arms. I thought we were going to spend the whole day here, Commander. Are we leaving now? Riftan ignored him and ushered Maxi out. Another knight approached them from the door and complained loudly. Come now, Commander. We're not going to gobble the lady up. No need to shield her, so shut your mouth. Have I not told you to watch your tongue? It's ludicrous. All this just for the daughter of the Duke of Croiso. I told you to shut up, growled Riftan. Riftan turned toward Maxi and thrust her into the carriage. Don't mind them. After reassuring her, he slammed the carriage door closed. They have no love for your father, but you are no longer a Croiso. You are now Lady Calypse, my wife. And I'll make sure they never disrespect you again after today. Croiso's daughter. Those two words were a stark reminder of how their relationship had come to be. Unable to think of a suitable reply, she kept her eyes fixed on her knees. Have my men hurt your feelings? Riftan's voice was tinted with concern. With a jolt, she looked up in disbelief. No one had ever bothered to ask about her feelings, yet he was walking on eggshells before her. The tail was wagging the dog. She smiled in spite of herself. You know, began Riftan, gazing at her with an inscrutable expression on his face. Pardon. This is the first time you've smiled at me. As he reached to caress her cheek, she felt her breath catch in her throat. His lips quivered as if he wanted to say something, but instead he withdrew his hand and bellowed through the carriage window as if nothing had happened. What are you all waiting for? You said we were in a hurry. Someone outside grumbled, and the carriage began to move. Weary from days of being tense with fear, Maxi barely noticed the violent rattling of the carriage. She drifted into sleep, feeling as if she was being gently rocked in a cradle. The carriage left the village and passed through vast farmlands, moving slowly on the unpaved dirt roads. It was dark when they reached a small village near Udal Forest. Maxi had never traveled so far by carriage, and she was drained. Riftan strode toward his men. The knight who had been talking with the village guard turned around at Riftan's footsteps. "There are no suitable lodgings here, Commander." Riftan quickly scanned the area. 4 or 5 unlit cottages lay clustered at the end of a winding dirt path. Following Riftan's gaze, the knight hastily added an explanation. "Those 5 cottages are all occupied by farmers who were sent for the harvest, but there is an empty barn." The knight glanced at Maxi, his voice trailing off. "Perhaps we could stay there for the night." Riftan frowned and turned to speak to the guard. "Is there no suitable lodging for the lady?" "Only cottages to house the farmers during the harvest season, sir. We could have 2 emptied at your command, but I'm afraid they're no place for your lady. Still, better than a barn. You will be rewarded handsomely if you can arrange one." Maxi clung to Riftan's arm in surprise. "I'm all right." She did not feel right forcing out serfs who had been slaving away all day under the sun. Nor did she wish to spend the night alone in a dark, spooky cottage. "I don't want to be alone." In the uncomfortable quiet that ensued, Maxi realized how her words had been received. Riftan gave no answer, perhaps struck dumb by her shamelessness. She clutched at her dress, not daring to look him in the eye. The knights exchanged awkward looks, but, much to her relief, they soon changed the subject. "Is it decided then? I'm starving. Let's get some rest. You there? Where can we find some water? We should look after the horses first. There's a brook by the mill. This way." Only after the men had dispersed did Riftan take Maxi's hand into his. "We should go as well." "Yes." She almost had to run to keep up with Riftan's long strides. If it were not for Riftan's quick reaction, she would have tripped over the bumpy ground countless times. They followed the ditch and came to a stop before a large wooden structure that emerged in the dark. A few knights entered first and hung their lamps up. Maxi followed Riftan inside and studied her surroundings. Everywhere the light reached, silken cobwebs gleamed like the tangled white hair of a specter. She would not have been surprised if a ghost suddenly appeared. The wooden floorboards creaked under a thick layer of dust. The men set down their bedrolls nonchalantly and shed their unwieldy armor piece by piece. Riftan was no exception. He spread an ample amount of hay in the corner of the room to cushion his bedroll. "Over here." But Maxi could not bring herself to lie down. Certain that the makeshift bed was infested with bedbugs, she managed only to perch on the edge. The barn was by no means small, but with 18 people inside, it felt cramped. "We won't find a comfortable bed for days. You must bear it until we reach Anatol." Maxi nodded. She had never been in the same room as so many men, and she was nervous. The knights, however, were too busy lighting the brazier and preparing food to pay her any attention. When Riftan left the fireside and approached her, she raised her head to see a bowl full of hot potatoes, burnt brown here and there from roasting in the fire. "Careful, they're still hot." Riftan ignored his own warning. He grabbed a steaming potato with a large, calloused hand and took a bite. Maxi followed suit, gingerly wrapping a scalding hot potato in her sleeve before peeling off the burnt skin to reveal soft yellow flesh. As she took a small bite, she was overcome by a wave of hunger that anxiety had been keeping at bay. The roof of her mouth burned, but she continued to chew and swallow bite after bite of steaming hot potato. Even the chewy, half-cooked pieces tasted like a rare treat. She found that she had devoured a fist-sized potato in no time. Riftan, who had been watching her eat, had a peeled potato ready for her. Maxi frantically waved her hands. "I've had my share. You should have it, Riftan. Just take it." He pressed the potato into her hands, then snatched another one from the bowl. Without even peeling it properly, he bit off a large mouthful. After staring at her own potato, which had been peeled smooth, she brought it to her mouth and began to eat with gusto, blowing every now and then. With her stomach full, she felt sleepy. Her fear of bedbugs forgotten, she laid her head on the bedroll. The flame of the brazier in the center of the barn cast a dim light on the walls and ceiling. One by one, the knights finished eating and arranged their bedding. It was she who had refused the privacy of the cottage, but she was still embarrassed by the idea of sleeping among so many men. She pulled her blanket up to her chin. Seeing her stir, Riftan set aside the sword he had been polishing and lay down next to her. He wrapped an arm around her tightly, but Maxi pushed it away. "Riftan, there are other people here. No one gives a damn, so stay still. You're cold, aren't you?" Riftan slid an arm under her neck and rubbed his cheek against her head. He appeared to be warming her up, thinking that she was cold. Not knowing what to do, Maxi peeked over his shoulder to see if anyone was watching them. As Riftan had predicted, no one so much as glanced their way, but she did not have the nerve to stay pressed to his side. "I'm all right, so could you move over a little? Can't you see she's embarrassed? You should really be more considerate." Maxi's head snapped up to see who the speaker was. A lean young man who looked to be in his early to mid-20s stood a few feet away, holding a small lantern in his hand. "Mind your own business, Ruth. Away with you. There's no need to growl at me like a watchdog. I have no intention of harassing your lady." Maxi's eyes went round with surprise. The young man spoke with the tone of a man scolding a feral dog, seemingly unfazed by Riftan's daunting presence. "What do you want?" The night was chilly, so I took the liberty of bringing something for the lady. He fished for something in his robe pocket. When his hand reappeared, there was a small stone shining faintly on his papery palm. A firestone. I cast a spell on it to keep it warm, so hold on to it. "Is this really for me?" His unexpected kindness surprised her. The young man raised an eyebrow. "Who else? Those men over there could sleep soundly in the nude under a pile of snow." His tone was scathing, as if he did not care who could hear him. "But you're different, my lady. You are not in fine fettle, by the looks of it. I would be the one to suffer should you catch a cold, so consider this a preventive measure." She took the stone, and just as he had promised, a draft of warm air enveloped her. She stared at the stone in awe before realizing that she had not expressed her gratitude. "Thank you, Sir Ruth." A subtle look flashed across the young man's face. "I'm a sorcerer, not a knight. You can just call me Ruth." With that, he turned around as if to say he had no further business and walked across the room to his bed. She was watching him blankly when Riftan plunked himself down and pulled her toward him, evidently annoyed. "You must be tired. Go to sleep now. We leave at sunrise tomorrow." He snuffed out the bedside lantern. As if on cue, the knights put out their lanterns one by one, and darkness descended. Maxi squirmed uncomfortably in his arms before a wave of intense fatigue overcame her. She closed her eyes, the steady thrum of Riftan's heartbeat soothing her like a lullaby. Moments later, she was deep asleep, all qualms about sleeping in a dirty barn forgotten. When morning dawned, the village was animated with a vitality that bore none of the eerie silence of the previous night. The beauty of Udal Forest was visible just behind the row of cottages, and to the front of the humble lodgings was an endless field of rippling golden wheat. Maxi watched the passing scenery through the window. The wheat fields grew distant, and her vision was soon filled with a dense wall of trees. Rays of sunlight shone through the canopy of leaves and fell on the winding path like a veil woven with golden thread. The knights rode in formation at a leisurely pace through the cascading light. Maxi anxiously scanned the dense thicket for foul monsters that might jump out to ambush them. But her worries were for naught, and the journey progressed peacefully. Before long, she slumped onto the seat, exhausted from the strain of her nerves being on edge in the shaking carriage. Her vigilance, after all, would not protect them. After a good while, the carriage came to a stop. The door opened and Maxi saw Riftan standing there. "We'll rest here." Relieved, she hopped out of the carriage. She felt a tingle in her stiff legs as blood began to flow through them again. Stifling a groan, she lost her balance. Seeing this, Riftan took her in his arms and looked for a flat rock for her to sit on and began to massage her cramped legs. Flustered, she glanced around. The knights who had been watering the horses were now looking her way in disbelief. She blushed and pushed him away. "Riftan, I'm all right. Is that a habit of yours?" "Pardon." His hands were just above the hem of her skirt, massaging her calves lightly. "Every time you open your mouth, you say you're all right." She watched as his strong, sinewy hands gently squeezed her legs. She could not think of a suitable reply and instead wanted only to ask why he was being so kind to her. The butterflies in her stomach were pleasant, yet they also gave her the uncomfortable feeling of wearing clothes that were a touch too small. "You think you're bothering me?" he said. "You've been sleeping alone, so I thought I'd irritated you." He let out a deep sigh, and she hung her head with a hurt expression on her face. Seeing this, he muttered a curse and began leading her away by the hand. She tried to follow him as best she could on her unsteady legs. They were not far from the camp, but it was already alarmingly dark. The haunting cries of nocturnal birds mingled with the rustle of leaves in the wind. As Maxi squeezed Riftan's hand in fear, he pushed her against the thick trunk of a tree and kissed her hungrily. She gasped audibly. A soft tongue passionately wrapped itself around her own. She flinched at the sensation, but her movement only made him cup her face and kiss her more deeply. His soft hair tickled her forehead as his large hands gently stroked her neck and cheeks. "I want to stay up all night like this." He guided her hand down his body. She felt his hardness throbbing under her palm and gave a start. She tried to snatch her hand away, but his grip on her arm was too firm. "Have you any idea how excruciating it is to keep my hands to myself in this state?" Heat ignited between their bodies. Afraid of how she might react, Maxi tried to twist out of his embrace. "No, not here. You'll be the death of me, goddammit." Groaning, he knocked his head into the tree. Her body tensed at the sight of his shoulders, heaving with ragged breaths. She braced herself, thinking that her rebuff had displeased him, but he slowly backed away from her. "I can't help myself whenever I'm around you, so you should sleep alone in the carriage. Do you understand?" Once again, he led her away by the hand, this time back towards the camp. A burly knight sat perched on a rock, warming himself by the fireside rock. When he saw them returning, he flashed them a knowing grin. "Done so soon, Commander? It's been too long since you brandished your sword. Has it gone rusty?" Riftan stopped in his tracks and threw the man a murderous look. "Move it. Stop lazing about." Unfazed, the knight continued to snicker. So he wasn't annoyed with me. What a relief. The sun was at its zenith when they arrived at the foot of the mountain the following day. A narrow path led into the valley, and next to the path stood a small watchtower. For sentries hastily came out to greet the knights before leading them to a rest area where they were able to sit at a table for a proper meal of hot stew and roast potatoes. After sating their hunger, they rode again. They decided to take the most direct route to reach Anatol before sundown, which meant that Maxi had to step off the carriage to ride with Riftan. The weather isn't looking too good, so we'll have to take a shortcut to reach Anatol before sundown. We can't take the carriage, so you'll have to ride with me. Will that be all right? Yes. She had ridden ponies and foals before, but never a warhorse. Perched awkwardly on the horse, she nervously gripped the saddle. Riftan locked an arm around her waist and drew her toward him. It's a shortcut, so it'll be a bumpy ride. Lean on me if you want to rest. She did not wish to be a burden, but with her lack of riding skills, it was impossible not to hold on to him as they rode through the mountain. She desperately clung to his arms, certain that she would fall off the horse any moment, but he did not utter an unkind word. After they had been riding a while, they heard shouts from a knight in the lead. "Commander, there are 5 werewolves, 2 Thradians, 360 meters ahead." The other knights drew their swords. Paralyzed with fear, Maxi gripped Riftan's clothes. "You'd better not make me take care of it," bellowed Riftan. "Worry not, Commander. I've been itching for some action." With that, Heberon charged forward, and the werewolves roared. Seeing Maxi gasp and tremble in terror, Riftan pulled her toward him and buried her face in his chest. "It'll be over soon. Keep your eyes closed." She closed her eyes and pressed her hands to her ears. But she could not block out the clash of swords and bestial roars. "Commander, above you." Maxi looked up reflexively and shrieked. Quick as lightning, a monster with dark fur jumped from its branch and pounced. But before the creature could reach them, it was sliced in half midair. Before she could grasp what had just occurred, Maxi found herself looking down at a sprawled corpse. Riftan clucked his tongue at the sight of his blood-spattered cloak. "Can't you even count, Gable? There were 6, not 5. Gable scratched his head in shame, having dashed over too late. Black werewolves can use concealment spells. Riftan snorted in response, then spurred his horse forward. Monsters with the bodies of humans and heads of wolves lay dead on tree roots that protruded from the ground like coiled snakes. After wiping their swords clean, the knights remounted their horses. "We should hurry. There might be more of them around," said Ruth, scanning the area. The other knights nodded, and the horses began to gallop along the sloping path. Maxi clenched her teeth to stop them from biting down on her tongue. For many hours, they rode over rocky, thickly wooded mountain paths. When they passed the peak, Maxi was greeted by a panoramic view. Maxi was spellbound. Beyond the wide-open plains lay a sizable village enclosed by gray stone walls. "That is my land, Anatol," said Riftan, pointing at the village. "Our people are mostly mercenaries or miners. There are serfs, too, but the land is ill-suited for cultivation, so our peasants mostly raise sheep, chickens, or goats." As she listened, Maxi surveyed the land that was to become her home. Pastures sprawled before a towering gate, and overlooking the village was a precipitous mountain. On the mountainside, an enormous, golem-shaped fortress leaned forward. A faint shiver ran up her spine as she beheld the proud structure. Anatol Castle, solitary and intimidating in its immensity, reminded her of Riftan. It may not seem luxurious on the outside, but the castle is quite nice on the inside. And compared to most castles, it's of a decent size. Riftan sounded nervous as he watched Maxi's gaze fixed on the castle. She turned to him incredulously. The stone fortress covered half the mountain. Was this what he considered a decent size? Perhaps Riftan was comparing his castle to the Croiso Castle, which was twice as large and built in the spectacular architectural style of the fallen Roman Empire. Riftan added uneasily, "We can renovate the interior if it isn't to your liking. I can order furnishings to make the castle as splendid as your father's, though it won't be easy to change the exterior. The castle may look dreary on the outside, but it can't be helped. Damn it. There are a lot of monsters in these parts, so... Are there many monsters? Maxi asked in alarm.